Let me ask you something. Why does the government let you pay the bank before you pay them? Why do they make it so easy to borrow money but so hard to save? And if debt is supposedly bad, why is the entire economy built on it? Here's the thing most people never stop to think about. Your government needs you to be in debt, not because they hate you, but because the entire modern economy collapses without it. Picture this. You get your paycheck, you pay your mortgage, your car loan, maybe your student loan. Then whatever's left, you pay your taxes. Seems normal, right? But think about what that means. You're paying the bank before you pay the government. That's not an accident. It's a policy. Here's how we got here. Back in 1929, the U.S. stock market crashed and the world economy flatlined. Factories closed, banks failed, unemployment hit 25%. People stopped spending, stopped investing. They just held on to their cash. And when everyone saves at once, the economy suffocates. So what did the government do? They flipped a script. They realized that if people won't spend, you can make them spend by encouraging debt. If businesses won't invest, you can make them invest by making credit so cheap they can't refuse. That was the birth of the debt-based economy. Now let's go a level deeper. Governments don't create most of the money you use. Banks do. When you take out a loan, the bank doesn't give you money that already exists. They create new money out of thin air by typing digits into your account. That's called fractional reserve banking. It means banks can lend out far more money than they actually hold. And the more debt people take on, the more money gets created. So debt is money. That's not a metaphor. That's literally how the system works. Now ask yourself this. If money is created when people borrow, what happens if people stop borrowing? The economy stops growing. And if the economy stops growing, governments can't collect enough taxes. If governments can't collect enough taxes, they can't pay for the promises they've made, like pensions, healthcare, military spending, all of it. So debt isn't a side effect of the system. Debt is the system. To keep that system alive, governments need three things: cheap credit, willing borrowers, and confidence in the currency. Let's unpack each. Cheap credit means low interest rates. The lower the rate, the easier it is for you to borrow. For a house, for a car, for your business. And when you borrow, you spend. When you spend, someone else earns. That creates the illusion of prosperity. Next, willing borrowers. If people get scared of debt, if they decide to pay everything off and stop taking loans, the machine grinds to a halt. So the government uses policy, marketing, and tax incentives to make borrowing attractive. Business interest, tax deductible. Mortgage interest, tax deductible. Student loans, government-backed. You see the pattern? They don't just tolerate debt, they reward it. And finally, confidence in the currency. If everyone suddenly realized that money is just government-backed IOUs, the illusion would break. So governments maintain faith through central banks, media, and the stability of institutions. As long as people believe the system works, it works. Now here's where it gets sneaky. The government doesn't have to force you to borrow. They just have to make you want to. They do it by weaponizing comfort. Think about the 30-year mortgage. It's not designed for you to own a house. It's designed for you to stay in the system, paying, consuming, refinancing. Think about student loans. You start your adult life in debt before you've even earned $1. And credit cards? They don't exist for convenience. They exist to keep you spending money you don't yet have. Every part of the system rewards the borrower and punishes the saver. You save money, inflation erodes it. You borrow money, inflation helps you pay it back cheaper. You take risk with debt, the system bails you out if you're big enough. That's not bad luck, that's design. From a macro point of view, the government's logic makes sense. Debt creates growth, growth creates jobs, jobs create tax revenue. So if they want to keep the economy stable, they need the cycle to keep spinning. When you buy a car on credit, the dealership gets paid. The workers keep their jobs. The company reports profits. The government collects taxes on all of it. It's a perfect little feedback loop. But here's the catch. It only works if people keep borrowing more than before. That's why every decade or so, interest rates have to drop to make the next round of debt affordable. That's why central banks panic when inflation slows or spending falls, because a slowdown in debt creation means a slowdown in money creation. And that's why your government wants you in debt, because your borrowing keeps the entire system alive. Here's the dark side. This system doesn't reward responsibility. It rewards participation. The people who play the game, who take on debt, buy assets, and use leverage, get richer. The people who play it safe, who save money, avoid risk, and live within their means, fall behind. Because when money is debt, and debt is constantly expanding, the value of every dollar you save is shrinking. So the system quietly transfers wealth from savers to borrowers, from workers to asset owners, from those who earn money to those who create money through leverage. And that's why inequality keeps widening, not because people are lazy, but because the game is rigged in favor of those who understand it. Now let's talk about governments themselves. Governments are the biggest borrowers in the world. They've learned that as long as they can issue more debt and people keep buying it, they never have to pay it back. They just roll it over forever. That's what national debt really is, a promise that will never be fully paid, just managed indefinitely. The irony is, when you work and pay taxes, part of that money goes to service government debt, which exists because the system you live in requires constant borrowing. It's a loop, and you're in it. So what happens when the loop breaks? When debt gets too high, interest rates rise, or people lose confidence, the system trembles. Then governments face two choices: let the system collapse and reset naturally, or print more money to keep it alive. Guess which one they always choose? They print, they stimulate, they borrow more. Because no politician ever wants to preside over a collapse. That's why crises keep repeating. The Great Depression, the dot-com bubble, the housing crash, COVID stimulus. Different events, same medicine. Print money, cut rates, issue more debt. The system survives, but every time it becomes more fragile. Now here's where you come in. You can't change the system, but you can learn to operate within it. Because once you understand why the government wants you in debt, you can start making moves that align with reality instead of fighting it. If inflation erodes cash, hold assets. If the system rewards borrowers, become a strategic borrower. If the economy runs on credit, learn to use credit as a tool, not a trap. The rich don't complain about the system, they use it. They borrow at 4% to buy assets that yield 10%. They pay themselves in dividends and defer taxes through debt. They play the game governments built, and they win because they understand the rules. But understanding the system doesn't mean loving it. It means seeing it clearly so it doesn't control you. So why does the government want you in debt? Because debt is the engine of growth. Because every loan you take creates new money. Because your interest payments feed the banks, your spending fuels the economy, and your taxes sustain the state. Debt isn't a glitch in the system, debt is the system. And until that changes, until we stop mistaking credit for prosperity, the only way to survive the game is to understand it better than the people who designed it. Here's the truth. You're not supposed to escape the system, you're supposed to outsmart it. So the next time someone tells you that debt is bad, remember it's only bad if you don't know how to use it. Because while most people are drowning in the system, a few are quietly sailing right over it. This is Money Decoded. If you want to understand how the game really works, not the version they teach you in school, subscribe and let's keep decoding.